appreciate you, and I appreciate you helping with the slides as we move forward too. So if you wouldn't mind, if you're able to queue up what comes next so that I can roll us forward.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you. So,
Welcome.
thank you. I appreciate it. So like we discussed, I'm Teresa Moon. I'm director of all kinds of things at Parabolas. Primarily right now, I head up market strategy. Parabolas is a Northern Virginia based lender where we were founded in 2013 by former federal contracting executives and veterans. Our CEO is a 30-year Air Force veteran. He's a retired CIO of Air Force Intelligence. Um, you served 20 years in active duty and then 10 years in the reserves. And in his civilian life has 25 plus years of experience as a contractor. So lots and lots and lots of great information that I've been able to gather by being led by people who are so ingrained in this environment. So I'm very fortunate to be able to take their expertise and lend it to discussions like these. My own personal background in government contracting is that I started my career as leading business development and capture teams for small government contractors. And the lessons that I learned leading those teams, both with the interaction of developing a proposal team, but also in my interaction with having executive level conversations about financial planning as it pertained to our contract acquisition process, is what leads me to conversations like this with you today. So I definitely understand the plight of the business development process. And I extend my kudos to all of you that are on here today who are also the business owners. It takes a lot of courage and conviction to level up and become a business owner. And so I'm extending my availability to you going forward. Should you like to schedule some time one-on-one to discuss anything that we talk about today or anything that might strike you as, forward momentum for conversations we can have in the future pertaining to financial planning and your business development process. Next slide, please. Awesome. So let's talk about a little bit of the some of the things that we're going to chat through today. Some of you on our conversation today might be a startup, and traditionally startups have always had difficulty finding funding. So we'll talk through that a little bit. Government contracting in general, as it pertains to traditional lending, has always had an issue with access to what we all have been, I think, ingrained in our knowledge of the banking system as understanding as what our access to capital would be. So we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like. For those of you who are a little bit more astute with what rates and annual percentage rates are, the Federal Reserve in September lowered by 50 base points what your financial APR would be for a line of credit. It went from 8.5 to 8.0, which might not mean anything to some of you, but it was a step in the right direction because over the last several years, we've seen a significant increase in the rates that the banks are able to provide. And we'll talk a little bit about that, what that might mean for you as well. I want to make sure that we discuss through the fees that are attributed to both traditional side and alternative side of the lending process as well. Because there's a lot to it, and sometimes things aren't as disclosed and aren't as transparent as they should be. And so I'd love to be able to speak to that a little bit more as well. And then, talking through what financial documentation can do in terms of your financial past performance is key. So let's start a little bit at the beginning. Those of you who are on today that are a startup, you want to be able to advocate on your own behalf. And I find what's most, I think, refreshing about the startup market is you haven't gotten deterred by having too many conversations that have lessened your ability to be open and vulnerable about what you do and don't know in terms of your funding process. So startups have always been a difficult area for lenders to be able to provide access to capital. I think we traditionally think about it in the government contracting environment that contract in hand equals access to capital, because that contract is your vehicle towards showing your business stability. But to a lender, they're looking more, and when I say lender in this respect, I'm talking about the traditional or your banking environment. Your banking partner is looking at what's happened in the past, where when you're looking at it as a business owner, you're looking about what you have today and going forward. And that's not how the lending process presents itself to you in your business process. Your banker is going to be looking at what you've done in the last 18 to 24 months consistently. And if you're a startup, you can't provide that to them. So you right off the bat have limited access as it pertains to a bank providing you any funding going forward, whether you have a contract award or not. So you're automatically from day one of your business or having to look into the alternative sphere of lending, regardless of whether or not you're participating actively in a contract opportunity. As I spoke a little bit about, the banks typically look at government contracting as a risky environment because of the ebb and flow of the way we do business, right? We see right from the beginning as we engage in a contract opportunity that we have a lot of stops and starts in our process. And a lot of that has to do with different agencies having different processes, contracts being initiated, started, stopped. The progression of that is very inconsistent. So though, while it may provide very high level of success very quickly, the inconsistency of it in comparison to the commercial market has always been seen as a risk to your bank. So there are ways to skirt around that. First and foremost, by forming a banking relationship with a bank that understands government contracting. When you work with some regional banks, especially regional banks that might be outside of the DMV, for instance, they might not have a level of understanding of government contracting the way a business or a banking office within the district or around the, Maryland, Virginia, Northern Virginia areas might understand government contracting because of their familiarity with doing business with government contractors. I live in Orlando and travel around the country, and a lot of the work that I do is with different banking environments and banking relationships. And when you move from region to region, you see really quickly what regions lend themselves to government contracting from a banking perspective and which ones don't. And so if you have a banking relationship and you go in and you talk with your banker about what you do for a living and they don't understand the way the government contracting industry works, you probably should look to moving at least your business relationship to a bank that understands that. And I'm happy to make recommendations based off of where you are in the United States. I know not everyone on this call today is based in the DMV, but I have plenty of relationships nationwide that I can share, different banks that lend themselves a little bit more friendly to the government contracting market, because it's hugely, important to your process for them to be able to advocate for you once you have that relationship on multiple levels. And business bankers who don't understand the ebb and flow of the contracting environment make it very difficult for them to advocate for you beyond a certain level. So, that's something that you definitely in your process should see. And going back a little bit to what my own level of experience has lent to this type of conversation. When I started in government contracting, I've always been a relationship builder. I was born and raised here in Orlando, and when I got into the contracting environment, a lot of the business that I was earning for the contractors that I was working for were based off of my personal relationships. So I was able to get involved in a level of opportunity very quickly because of my network. And we'll talk a little bit down the road about why that type of experience in business development is important. But from my own experience, I got hired by a couple of different contractors. The business owners had that typical conversation that is had with a business development representative of, these are our NAICS codes. Go out and win as many contract awards as you can under those NAICS codes, and then come back and we'll talk logistics going forward. And so because of the network that I had, in the Orlando environment. And so for those of you who aren't familiar, Orlando is synonymous with the simulation modeling and training community. We're actually the hub of simulation modeling and training for the entire world. So there's a lot of opportunities within government contracting right here where I grew up. So I was very successful very fast in generating opportunities for the contractors that I worked for. Came back to the office with a startup business owner who was, to my dismay, not as excited as I was about the opportunities that I was able to bring to the table. Reason being, there was no financial plan in place that if I was able to win the opportunity, would they be able to fund it? And so that immediately struck me as a missed opportunity for our team to be able to have those conversations first, because it was my own lack of unknowing, plus the business owner's lack of knowing what the process looked like post contract award. That is the worst time to be charting your financial plan for a contract opportunity is post award, especially when task orders can come out very quickly. Some award opportunities are based off of your level of access to capital. Sometimes you have to prove that up front. So not knowing that before you actually go after an opportunity really puts you at a deficit from the beginning. So it's very important for you to understand that process for your business prior to contract award. And though it is the business owner's obligation to know what the plan is for financial output post award, it is also the responsibility of the business development and capture teams to lay out within their strategy how much it will take to execute at the highest level, and then bringing that to the executives early on so that the discussion can be made of this is how much it's going to cost for us to execute so that we get our past performance scores at the highest level possible. And going forward, will you have the access to not only perform from the start at that level, but throughout the course of whatever the contract opportunity duration is? So it's really understanding that. So, that level of interaction that I lost out on in the beginning, thankfully we were able to turn over, some really positive progress within that. But it was really scary in the beginning because as a business development leader, your relationships are the catalyst for the contract award. And so the people that are entrusting you the ability to execute at the highest level aren't concerned with your external team as much as they are for you as the BD person to be upfront with them about all of the, abilities and capabilities, you know, post process or start of the contract process. Like, it's time to execute. This is what we're going to do. They're assuming because of your relationship that you've been upfront with them with everything that's going to happen. So if you don't and your team doesn't ante up to that level that they expect, it's on you, not on the business owner. And so you might have a harder time getting an opportunity with those businesses again if something like that happens. And that's what I was very concerned about. So those of you who are the business owner and the business development representative for your company, you need to be thinking about that really concisely before you even go after any contracts, because being able to fund it is something that you should know beforehand, and having the knowledge of your plans B, C, D, E when things fall through, because they always do. You don't want to end up having a mismanagement issue because you didn't have a plan in place for every stage of growth. So moving through this a little bit further, your prime rate with your bank, that's based off of how much you're going to pay for the capital you're borrowing, right? But that's misleading because a bank can start at 8%, but based off of your financial history, they might tack on additional interest rate points based off of their, um, I would say, their confidence in your ability to pay it back. So a lot of what they're looking at, like I said, is 18 to 24 months prior to you coming to them for that lending process. And then they're going to take that information plus whatever you're showing them as your future award interactions. And they're going to decide on that how much extra they might want to tag on that 8.0 in terms of how much you're paying. But there are also other fees that the bank imposes on the lending process that might not be disclosed up front that you find out after the fact. So people sometimes think, well, the bank's rates are marketed as being lower, there's also rates that they don't disclose and discuss up front that you might not be aware of without asking. And so it's important that you understand that. And I think this is going to harken back to a couple of things that we'll talk about a little bit more in more detail as we move through this presentation. But it's having a team around you that can advocate for your business when you're not as knowledgeable about those things as you are about the capabilities that led you to become the business owner that you are. What I found in interacting with a lot of small business owners is that they're more of a functional operator than they are generally super knowledgeable about every level of running a small business. And so, because of that, they tend to be the single point of failure for their business because there's a lot that they don't understand about the nuances of what it takes to run a business. And so, they try to hold on to it for too long without outsourcing or hiring within. And so it's cliche, but we always say, do what you do best and outsource the rest, whether it's fractionally in the beginning and moves into full time, or it always remains fractionally just because your level of need there. Because if you're the single point of failure for your company, I'm sure that would make you feel bad to know that you're the one that's holding everything back, trying to save a few bucks, bootstrapping it for too long, or not educating yourself at a high enough level of every um, position within your company. You try too hard to micromanage everything so that you think that you have control over it, as opposed to not knowing what you don't know and hiring someone who can help you advocate and proceed through the mission of what the course of business is for your actual company. So it's super important that you not only understand all of the fees, but you have people around you who can speak on your behalf and then come back and talk to you candidly about what that means, what it actually is going to cost you. Because if you don't understand all the fees, then you don't know how much you're paying for the money you're borrowing. And that's super important to your bottom line, as you know, as a business owner. It's also really important to understand that just because you have a contract award in hand, that doesn't mean that the bank is going to be wooed by it. As a matter of fact, no lending partner, except for those who are going to prey on the lack of understanding that you have, is going to be excited about the fact that you've been awarded a contract. They want to know what your level of success has been in the past by showing accurate financial documentation. And they also want to see cash flow projections about what's going to happen in the future. So even if today is the first day of your business, you should be developing accurate financial documentation from day one so that when you're ready to go in and have a lending conversation, you're not sharing with a financial advisor of any capacity, whether it's a banker, whether it's a CPA, whether it's a fractional CFO, inaccurate information, because that's when the insecurities start, right? That business, whatever it is, whether it's the bank or a CPA or fractional CFO or whoever it is going to have a lack of confidence in your ability to share with them transparent and accurate information. And on the other side, you're going to feel insecure that you did things incorrectly for whatever period of time, and you might need help then to dig yourself out of that ditch that you didn't know you were digging for yourself. And so it's very important that you address all of those insufficiencies in your process early on so that you don't have to spend too much time, too much effort, and too much cash that to make up for mistakes that you made because you tried to do things on your own for too long. And financial past performance is essential and by that I mean by creating, establishing, and continuing through long-term accurate financial documentation. Next slide, please. So tips of what to do, we've talked about a little of these already. Let's get involved a little bit deeper. So making a financial plan before your business development planning starts. Make sure that your business development representatives or team understands, if you're not the one as the business owner who runs that, you outsource that portion. Empower that business development team to develop a plan of how much it will cost for them to execute at the highest level possible for any opportunities that you want them to go after. It's imperative that this is done prior to contract award, because as you'll find throughout your contract life cycle, your contractor life cycle, meaning the life cycle of your entire business, your access to capital is going to change. And so if you're not getting used to having a financial discussion with your team early on, then your progression through your life cycle is always going to be stifled because you're not putting good practices in place early on that are going to enable your growth instead of inhibit it. And thinking that your team doesn't have a right to engage in that level of discussion with you will just impede your ability to perform at the highest level. So as the CEO of your business or COO of your business, however you're, participating in it at this point, you need to let your team know the level of access that you have to capital for 6, 12, 18 months period and decide based off of that amount of access, do you need to go and seek out alternatives? Can you get an increase at any time? Are you stuck with what you have because of where you are in your life cycle? All of these are conversations that you need to have beforehand so that when you win that award, you're confident that going forward, you can execute at the highest level. Because if you win it, can you fund it? Is your number one priority. Okay. The unifier for every business owner across every level of business is the number one need of all businesses of all sizes in all industries is access to cash. It doesn't matter where you are in your life cycle. It doesn't matter how small you are, how big you are, how successful, how unsuccessful. You will always need access to capital to keep rolling. And so this is the unifier. So I can't encourage you more than to engage with people through the chat today by putting in your information because you might meet a business owner that's a little bit further ahead than you in their journey, and they can share with you the avenues that they took throughout the different stages of growth to access the capital that they needed to get to that next level because it changes. It doesn't stay static. You might have the same partners for long periods of time, but your level of access will change based off of your level of growth and your ability to show sustainability in your growth. So it's important that you build a team of strong resources around you, both in your network and in your internal resources. So I refer to both as internal and external employees, if you will. So your internal partners or your internal resources are your employees that you hire. And obviously, you as a business owner are going to be very mindful that those people that you hire share your mindset of what success looks like. But your external partners should as well, because those are an extension of your team and, in essence, an extension of your internal team. So they're an employee as well. So if they don't share the same feeling about what success looks like for you, then you need to be wary of bringing them in as an external partner because they might not be a good advocate for you and your growth. So I would say, as you are building your team and your network, these are the times where you being involved with different organizations that support your industry will allow you to learn from business owners that are a little bit further ahead of you of how building those external resources to support your internal employees is super important. And the way that you do that is by making sure that you are not only building your external expertise, right? You've got a set of capabilities that is your experience. And I think that your experience is going to lead to you gaining opportunities that generate your past performance. So lead with that in every respect. You lead with that when you're going after contract opportunities, but you need to lead with that in the organizational opportunities that you have as well. Different groups that you can engage with. For instance, those of you who are SCVOSBs, VOSBs, get involved in national and regional organizations that support your efforts. So, super well known in this environment is the NVSBC, which I proudly support, the National Veteran Small Business Coalition. It's based in the DMV. Check them out online if you haven't already, but that's a great organization that advocates on behalf of more allocation of contract dollars to small businesses in the veteran-owned space. There are also organizations that support growth within procurement. So there's the Veterans Institute for Procurement. It's also based up in the DMV, Montgomery County area. Also a great organization that can help on a business development side. So making sure that you're building your past performance so that you can, lead through your capabilities as opposed to your certification. So while it's super important that veteran-owned businesses are designated so that they can get the contract dollar allocations. You don't want to lead with that because it's not going to gain you more contracts. What's going to gain you more contracts is your past performance within your experience, within your capabilities. So make sure that you're designating your work through, getting those recommendations from the primes that you're working with or the agencies that you're working with, because that's really going to lead to what comes next and not your certifications in general. And this is going to lead to being able to market yourself effectively because you want to do that all the time. Whether you're going after a solicitation now or not, you need to be looking at the highest level of capabilities that you have to market your capabilities, because that's how you get in front of agencies that have work that is allocated to your capabilities. So what does that look like? That looks like having a capability statement that's spoken to the mission of the agency or prime that you're trying to do work with. One generic capability statement is okay in the beginning, but as you grow, you need to be catering it towards the mission of what you're trying to support in the contract opportunity. So if you're not already doing it already, you should have multiple contract or multiple capability statements, and those should be based off of the capability that is allocated to a specific mission or designated to a specific prime or agency that you do work consistently with. There are many businesses that can help you develop these capability statements, and I'd be happy to introduce you to people who can help you with that. But get it in your mindset now that multiple capability statements are important, because one giant capability statement isn't going to be as impressive as you're developing your past performance history. Businesses are going to want to know what is it that you can do for them based off of the mission that you're trying to support. And so that's a perfect indication of poor marketing if you're not looking at it from that level. And like I said, getting involved in communities and organizations that support you is super important. Make friends with the agencies that you're doing work with. Make friends with the primes that you're doing work with, because this is a human to human environment as far as an industry. And you're more likely to get a contract opportunity from someone who actually knows who you are and they trust who you are. So you might not be the least expensive and you may not be the one with the most past performance, but the contracting officer might give you that opportunity because they know you as the business leader and they trust you. So formulating those relationships within the industry is super important in terms of, being able to continue your success in this industry. Next slide, please. Okay, advocating for yourself is super important. So you need to recognize very quickly where your limitations are. Step one is recognition, right? So you look at things from a perspective of you got into business because you know your capabilities are in demand, but something within what you do poses some type of a risk to the banking environment. Now, I know that this isn't rocket science, and this is nothing that you probably haven't heard before, but your banking partner is your most heavily regulated partner, right? They've got all kinds of federal regulations and rules that are imposed on a bank, especially as it pertains to lending. And so because of that, they've created so many covenants that make it difficult for certain industries to ever gain access to the level of um, capital that they might need for a specific opportunity. So let's recognize some of those industries right off the board. A lot of companies that are in the construction and transportation environments, industries, have a difficult time getting access to traditional lending in a upward momentum perspective. So if you are involved, if you're a general contractor and a lot of what you do differs from contract to contract, you will probably have a difficult time getting cash from your bank. And I know that this is defeating because the infrastructure and the promise from the federal government is there's a ton of dollars going into the construction industry. But those businesses, especially the smaller businesses who support some of the larger companies that are doing a lot of this work, have a difficult time getting the funding that they need to perform. So for instance, the bridge in Maryland that is having to be rebuilt. There's a lot of small business allocation going into that right now. And those small businesses need to be having conversations with their banks. If you know that your capabilities are going to be useful on a project like that, before you start going after those solicitations, you need to make sure that your bank can support you to a high level, because construction is going to be necessary, and small businesses are going to be looked for to perform those duties. However, the bank has a hard time lending money to the construction environment. Same goes with transportation. Transportation is highly valuable, especially in this type of contract opportunity as well, right? There's going to have to be a lot of truckers and trucking and road transportation and that type of thing. And that typically doesn't lend itself to the banking environment unless you're a very, very, very large company. So recognizing your ability to gain access to capital is super important, because if there's not a traditional lender that can help you there are alternatives. And there's lots of different alternatives. But waiting until you need money tomorrow so that you're having to look into an alternative that is going to prey off of your lack of understanding of the process is going to pigeonhole your ability to ever be profitable. So make sure that you do your homework ahead of time and know what's going to be available to you if you win these opportunities. Are you in one of those industries that banks typically don't like to lend to, especially within like the first 10 years, regardless of your level of success? If you know that, then you will understand the, viable resources that are available to you in the funding environment. Next slide, please. So leverage your partnerships. This all harkens back to your relationships within the industry. Okay. So foster communication and connections as you are building your business. Your network is going to be hugely impactful to your ability to grow. And as a former business development leader, with government contractors, I cannot tell you any more or any louder that generating human to human relationships with people within government agencies, within organizations that support the industry that you're in, with the large primes that you're seeking work with, is going to be your biggest catalyst to growth, because people like to do business with people that they value and respect and trust. And it takes time to build that trust. So that's why it's important that you not only engage online in events like this, but in person as well. Empowering your team to show up in person and look people in the eye and find out who they are as people. It's not so much coming in with the mission of the agency memorized, it's finding out who that mission representative is and what's important to them. So if Curtis is at an event, get to know him, right? He's a representative of the Department of Veteran Affairs, and he's there with a lot of information of opportunities that might come down the way. But knowing him as a person is gonna, and letting him know that you really care about who he is probably gonna let him be more enticed to take your call the next time you're reaching out about an opportunity. Same with me. When I know that people are making an investment in me as a person outside of my professional, persuasion, it makes it more enjoyable for us to get to know one another, and thus be more familiar as a business relationship builds. We're all, more inclined to do business with people that we like and care about and trust, before we look at what their capabilities and their past performance actually looks like. It's just who we are as human beings. And so being aware of that, will help your networking, because you don't have to be, just a regurgitator of capability statements. Being a human and really engaging with people on a human level goes a lot further in the long run, in terms of being able to really get successful and build up. That's personal marketing, right? You're building an army of people behind you who really want to see your level of success grow, and then help market you as well as you being able to do that on your own. So what better, I mean, we see it in the social media marketing, right? All of these big businesses have these social media influencers that talk about what using their products does in their life to influence other people to buy it. Same thing goes in our industry, right? If you can find agency representatives, large prime representatives to buy into why doing business with you is a good idea, if they hear of an opportunity with someone else in the government contracting market, they're going to remember you and share your information with other people in the industry. So it's super important that you make your marketing first a personal investment and second a capabilities investment, because we want to do business with people that we know and like and trust. And that's just a given. That's just who we are, made up as human beings. So you really need to make it your top priority. So be present at these events. Show up. Don't lead with your business card and your capability statement. Lead with who you are as a human being. And then the biggest thing, and I'll reiterate it on another slide that's coming up here too. You need to have a CPA or a bookkeeper that is not only in charge of putting your financial documentation together, but then can potentially be present in conversations that pertain to a financial plan so that they can kind of be your translator if you need it. Not everyone is, made to be a, financial um, planner, if you will. So if that isn't your prowess, if that's not your expertise, hire people around you that can support you in that effort, because it is the most important aspect of your business, whether you want to believe it or not. Your ability to get a contract opportunity is second to whether or not you have enough capital to stay in business long term. So don't delay in getting the right people around you to advocate for stuff like that right off the bat, because if you don't know how to do it, it's going to come across really quickly, and it's going to, convey a lack of confidence from whoever you're speaking to that needs that information. And it's going to instill a level of insecurity in yourself and your ability to do that and perform that role for your business. Next slide, please. So if I was going to say take a screenshot, I'm happy for Curtis's team to share out any of this information. The slide deck in general can be shared out. So just putting that out there. But if you want to have some really important information right off the bat, this is going to be something that you can lean into pretty quickly. This is my top 10. I envisioned it as David Letterman's top 10, but none of this is really funny. So it's really critical. Number one, hire a CPA. If you're a brand new business today or you're in your first year, you should already have one, or at least a bookkeeper. It doesn't have to be someone that's working for you full time. If you need something at a fractional level, that's completely fine. But unless you've got a financial background or you're a CPA yourself, you should not be handling your own books, because just because QuickBooks is offered to everyone out there, it's a data repository. So it's going to take whatever data you give it and generate reports based off of that. So if you haven't given it correct and accurate information, it's going to generate reports based off of inaccurate and incorrect information. And that's what you're going to be using to advocate on your own behalf to get access to capital. So that's first and foremost. Get a CPA or a bookkeeper, whether it's full-time or fractionally working for you from day one. And then number two, you need to, have that accurate reporting based off of accurate financial information. Your financial past performance is your financial documentation. So when you go into any lender, whether it's a bank or anything on the alternative side, they're going to want to see financial reporting, and that is your financial past performance. Just like your past performance on your contracts is your catalyst for winning your next contract. So if you didn't have any past performance, it's hard to get that next stage opportunity, right? Same with your financial planning. If you don't have accurate financial documentation, you're not going to have access to the capital that you need. Number three, understanding your funding options. You need to know everything that's available for you. So if you have someone like a bookkeeper or a CPA that can help walk you through that, because it's going to change throughout each stage of growth. So you need to either know on your own and build the plan, or have an advocate work with you to build a financial plan with milestones so you know what's working and what's not. Our CEO says all the time that if you don't know where your money is, then you don't know how successful or unsuccessful you are. So if that isn't your level of expertise, hire someone to work with you that can help walk you through that because it's very important. Number 4, your bank should be your first stop. Wherever you have your operating account for your business account, go there first. If you find that they don't have a level of understanding and expertise in government contracting, you might want to move your business banking relationship to a bank that does. I'm happy to share recommendations that I have nationwide for that particular resource, but it's very important that your banker is knowledgeable of government contracting because they won't be able to advocate for you internally if they don't know just a couple steps forward further about what you do. It's one thing to understand, say, construction, but it's another thing to understand construction opportunities within GovCon. So that's very important for you to start with your bank. And research the requirements with them. If you like your bank, they're good with GovCon understanding, go to them and say, okay, what is it that I'm going to need to qualify for a line of credit or a loan with the bank? And if in the event I show you this information and you say no, this moves on to point number 6. Ask them if they have an alternative partner that they can refer you to, but go a step further with that as well to point number 7. Ask them, do you not only have alternative lending partners that you can refer me to, but number 7, do you have banking relationships that have utilized these alternatives that you can also put me in front of so I can find out what their experience was? There's no better way to learn about a resource than through people who have actual experience with them. So take that 2-layer conversation to your banker. Can I qualify for what you have offering? Number 1. And number 2, is that offering, can you go a step further and refer me to an alternative partner of yours that can assist? And then number 3, is that, are there banking relationships that you have that have engaged with these partners that I can speak with and find out what their experience was? Because wouldn't it be nice to know, like, oh my gosh, you don't want to work with this company. There was nothing but a headache and a heartache the whole way through. And then you can eliminate them from a potential partner right off the bat because someone who has, journeyed that path before you is giving you a recommendation. Number 8, know the turnaround time. Wouldn't it be nice to know off the bat, how long is it going to take you to find out if you not only qualify for access to that lending, but when you'll be able to start drawing off of that access to capital? You need to know that prior to winning a contract award so you know if you have access to that capital before you actually need it. It is a heartache that you don't need to have about a worry of whether or not you can make payroll because you didn't adequately chart out your financial plan before you won the contract. So make sure that you have a team in place that can help you chart out that plan so that you understand the level of access that you will have and the amount of time it takes you to have that access turned on. Like, I can start borrowing as of this date and have that solidified in your plan. Number 9, document all the fees. So have that conversation with your bank first. I understand that prime is 8.0. That's 8% APR. What other fees are aligned with this type of lending with you? Used fees, unused fees. Am I going to need to provide audited financials that are going to cost me thousands of dollars? Ask for all of that information so that you can put that into the financial plan as well, because it is paramount that you know how much you pay for the capital that you are utilizing, because you need to factor that into your wrap rate overall so that you know how much profit that you can actually make. And then the last in this list is creative list of buyers that are actually purchasing your services. It's important for you to know who to network with when you're showing up at events, right? So just because you're SDVOSB doesn't mean that all your work has to be tied to the Department of Veterans Affairs. There's a lot of veteran contracts or veteran set-asides at other agencies. So make sure that you're only going after agencies and primes that actually need what you do, whether it's goods or services. Do your research so that you're not wasting time, spending time courting organizations or companies or agencies that will never buy from you because they don't have the need. And I believe this might be my last slide. The next one, if you switch to it, I think it's just my contact information. That QR code is going to link you directly with me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to take questions. I know I've delivered a a whole boatload of information here. Happy to take as many questions as are, going on right now, but you can also feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, or at my email address that I gave at the beginning. Happy to set some, one-on-one time to discuss through whatever you need, whether it's recommendation or assistance. Happy to be there. So thank you so very much for this time today. And like I said, I'm happy to open up the floor to questions.
Thank you, Ms. Teresa. That was wonderful. Great information. I'm sure the participants love it as well. Do have a few questions right now. One is, are there any selection of banks that would suggest that are contract knowledge for going to ask for funding?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on where you are, right? So if you're up in the DMV, there's a lot of banks that are, even from a regional level, that will be able to lend themselves to you as a government contractor. So, I don't want to say it's usually a banker that I would recommend as opposed to an actual bank overall. But they are, from a large banking perspective, JP Morgan Chase has a great selection of resources within them. As you get a little smaller, especially in the DMV area, Live Oak Bank, M&T, there are a lot of regional banks that have great knowledge and understanding of even West Banco in the DMV as well, who have knowledgeable representatives of government contracting. But that could be a one-off conversation as well. If you'd like to reach out, I can make some personal introductions to the bankers that I know in your area as well.
Absolutely. Thank you. And we do have a webinar on Wednesday if you'd like to join with I think it's Shady Grove Bank out here, and it's going to be called Access to Capital Business Lending from a Regional Community Bank. So if you want more information about some of the community banks, please join us on Wednesday.
Perfect. Look at that. It's like we planned it.
Yes. Next question. I did send out the list of the organizations that you were speaking about earlier for our support. I think it was VIP. You talked about the National Coalition of Veterans,
Yep.
small business as well. So I did send that list out earlier. So that was one of the questions. Next question is, do you think it's better to start under a prime contract or as a subcontractor to get experience under your belt?
I think that there is no shame in having a ramp up subcontracting game throughout the entirety of your process. I think all too often we look at the end game being get a prime contract. And while that should be a goal at some point, you don't need to start there because your past performance is going to be leading the charge of what opportunity comes beyond that. And so if it's cliche, right? But you've got to crawl before you walk. So you can get multiple subcontracting opportunities that amount to more than a prime opportunity would, and you do those all at the same time, and you build up your past performance scores so that you can really solidify your place in the market as a prime contractor. It makes it a lot easier for you to build the case for yourself across the board if you've done multiple subcontracting opportunities prior to being a prime. Sometimes a prime contract is a lot to ante up to, because then you're going to be responsible for outsourcing portions of that as well. And you might not have the network ability to know who those good subcontracts are. So don't be ashamed of being a subcontractor. There's no shame in that. You can make just as much or more as a subcontractor than you can as a prime. And you're building that very important past performance history while you're doing that. So don't negate it just because it doesn't sound superior. Subcontractors are wildly successful in our industry, and they don't have the responsibility of the entirety of the contract. So I think from a legality perspective, it's also more beneficial to be a subcontractor than a prime anyway. So partner with people, learn the ropes, and then you're building those relationships of being referred into other opportunities. So subcontracts are sometimes overlooked for being as impactful as they can be long term. So I'd say lean into it. They can be as successful as any prime contract.
Absolutely. Thank you. To sum up this question, you stated earlier that you knew a few times that you are willing to provide banking resources according to different locations, and wanted to know would it be difficult for you to share banking contacts nationwide for all attendees to benefit. But if this is a challenge, I would love to know what bank resources you have out in West California specifically. Thanks in advance if you have that info.
Absolutely. So two things probably would depend on the region that you're in California, number one, and number two, your duration in business, and then we can talk from there. So feel free to use that QR code and connect with me on LinkedIn and prompt me that this was your question, and I will try to make some introductions for you based off of where you are. I always think it's best to find a banking relationship that's close to you, not so that you can go inside the branch as much, but they tend to understand what it takes to work whatever your industry is in that region. And so it's always nice to have someone that's closer by to advocate on your behalf. But I'm happy to have a one-off conversation about that.
Thank you. Somebody is asking for your email address, so I'm gonna go back to the first slide. I do think it was on the first slide. There you
Yes.
go. There's Miss Teresa's contact information.
And if
Next
you go
book.
to parabolas.com as well, you can fill out, if you know right off the bat that you want, information about a line of credit from an alternative lender, that is what we do. So you can go to parabolas.com and seek out a consultation with our team. And you can indicate in your information that you provide that you met me through the Department of Veterans Affairs webinar, and I'll make sure that I'm cued into all of those conversations.
Thank you. And the last question that I see, one second. Somebody said they have an active SAM profile and others on the state and local level. I'm struggling to find opportunities in my area of expertise, event management and management planning. Do you have any tips for me to find valuable opportunities?
Yes, and this is really the biggest crux of difficulty that new businesses have moving from the commercial market into the federal marketplace. There is nothing that you've learned in the commercial market that's going to teach you how to navigate the procurement process within government contracting. So I would encourage you to engage with organizations that support business development practices as it pertains to how we do it in the with the federal government. I have who I think is the prime example of being able to teach techniques of business development within GovCon. I'm happy to share that as a one-off. So you've got my email address right here. If you email me and you put it in the subject box that you're looking for business development education programs, I can cue into that. I think that that's the first place to start. I think a lot of people think networking and knowing people is one thing, but it's like it's a crapshoot of whether or not you designate the right places and don't spend too much time marketing yourself to businesses or agencies that are never going to need you. So being able to designate industries or agencies and large primes that will utilize what you're selling is important, and knowing how to do that effectively as fast as possible so that you're not wasting too much time with those efforts is key. And so I can make an introduction so that you can get involved in some of those programs quick.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ms. Teresa. This is great information. And just to piggyback off Ms. Teresa, make sure you go into those industry days. Seeing it face to face. I just put in the chat our VetBiz link, where you will find our business opportunity sessions. We do host some session with our program officers looking for opportunities. Some of those large prime businesses looking for opportunities, for subcontractors. So definitely, look on our page, go to our ADAP events under the Access program, and look at the events that's coming up. Also, you will find on that page, you will see our National Veteran Small Business Engagement will be in Cleveland, Ohio in 2025. And that's going to be on October the 7th through the 9th. That'll be a time where you can sit down with the PDMs and discuss those opportunities and your capabilities and if you're looking to do business with the VA. Well, so I thank everybody for attending today. Happy holidays, everybody. You know, I'm a little jealous of Miss Teresa. She's in Florida where it's like 80 degrees. And I'm all the way here in DC where it feels like it's 30.
Yeah,
But
I,
definitely
I'm
so.
sorry, but I'm gonna rub it in.
So I'm a little jealous at that, but at the same time, I hope everybody have a wonderful day. Everybody is safe. See you next time. And if you need anything, please feel free to contact us and let us know. Have a good day. Please fill out the survey at the end. Let us know how we did today. Take your time on the survey because the first question or response come up, it does say strongly disagree. But if you do strongly disagree, understandable. But if not, please let us know how we did today. Hope everybody have a good day and talk to you soon. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Teresa. Thank you for your time and your expertise. Really mean that.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.